which presidential candidate is good for immigration, Brian? That's what we're going to talk about. Which presidential candidate?
We're talking about employment immigration, right?
Employment immigration, yeah. But we're going to also touch on other things. We can't avoid it. But I'm so happy today.
Why?
I'm so happy.
I think I know the answer, but I still want to hear it.
Okay.
Because we're going to be done talking about this effective tomorrow, right?
Yes. This has been a long presidential race. And also we got, most very contentious. There has been an attempted assassination.
2 attempted assassinations, Sam.
2 of them on the same person. And we've had 2 Democratic candidates on the other side.
Yep.
The first one got knocked out without an assassination. And then the second one comes in and spends $1.3 billion on the campaign. And I think Trump spends about $700–800 million. So she outspends him probably 2 to 1.
Yeah,
in the last
math checks
4
out,
months,
yeah.
you know.
Which is crazy to raise that sort of money in that sort of time, you know.
And tomorrow we are going to vote, or we're going to conclude the vote, and then we're going to spend a long time trying to figure out what's going on. That's the first thing. Now, I have a challenge. The challenge is, how can we do this in a short period of time? I'm Sam Shihab, and with me,
Brian Burke.
We are from the law firm of Shihab Burke. We're immigration attorneys. We practice immigration law in the U.S. and throughout the world, with focus on employment immigration and focus on family immigration as well. And today we wanted to take a moment to talk about what to expect for us, employment immigration, people who are filed the green card application and they've been waiting forever, people who are on H-1B visas, flashback sometime where, things were kind of dicey in terms of approvals, and the changes that we are to expect coming forward. I don't have an agenda how to dice this in the presentation. Do we do back and forth? What do we do?
I think we just sort of run down the list for a candidate. That's the simplest organization for me. We pick a candidate, we mentally flip a coin here, and we pick them and sort of talk about them and their take on employment immigration.
Okay,
I guess,
let's start the easy one.
Okay. Kamala Harris, right? Kamala Harris, is that the easy one?
I just set you up. You chose Kamala
Harris.
Harris.
So let's talk about the fundamental differences at the high meta level. I think there is relatively less to talk about regarding Kamala Harris.
I agree.
But which means it's a lot more cryptic, whereas there's so much to talk about with regards to Donald Trump. I think maybe, it's easy to talk about him, and once you've sort of laid out his position, maybe that's when you start talking about the compare and contrast with his opponent, because there's so much to talk about with him. And I don't know, Sam, where do you want to start?
Okay, so let's talk about Kamala Harris,
okay,
and let's talk about her agenda, and let's talk about one caveat. Whatever we think is going to happen, probably the opposite will happen.
Yeah.
These are agendas. The Congress passes the law, although the administration has a lot of sway with administrative executive orders and administrative decisions that they do now, because Congress has been gridlocked for decades in resolving the immigration challenges that we have.
But case in point is, Biden couldn't, he had his way, he would have, recaptured a bunch of unused immigrant visas, and he couldn't because he just didn't have the power. Congress couldn't pass it, and he concluded he didn't have the executive power to do it the way he wanted. There you go. Never happened there. So I guess what they want to do doesn't necessarily align with what they will actually accomplish on immigration.
So yes, Kamala Harris is the easy one. What we should expect is continuation of what we have.
I would agree. That would be my thesis statement as well.
I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes on the legal immigration. Now, on the illegal immigration, there's a lot of things that she is trying to correct. because obviously it was very clear that people are upset.
It has turned into a hot-button political issue, and she has to pay attention to it as well.
Yeah.
And that's something where Donald Trump has driven the discourse on that to something that she cannot ignore fundamentally. Yeah.
And it is, whether or not he's driving it, it is.
Yeah.
It is hot. It is a hot issue, and it is getting out of control. But she does have something on employment immigration that is positive that we were able to identify.
Well, yeah. Shall I read the quote pulled from her this is pulled from her campaign website, right?
Yes, that's from the, exactly.
So amongst the proposals from Kamala Harris are the first increases to legal immigration since 1990. Notably, for the first time since 1990, the bill would allocate additional immigrant visa green cards to expand legal immigration to the United States. The increases would amount to a 13% increase for employment-based visas and a 7% increase for family-based visas for the next 5 years. So that to me sounds like a little bit like one of those programs that they had been put out around the time of one of the various recapture programs, essentially. They could potentially look like one of those. This bill would also ensure that spouses and children of highly skilled workers, as well as people who come to the U.S. on fiancé visas, are eligible to work legally in the U.S. and would fix immigration laws so that children who are waiting for green cards, along with their parents, would not lose their path to citizenship when they turn 21, providing a solution for documented dreamers. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in there, though. So, more employment-based visas, good for people in our typically employment-based
Not a significant increase, but it'll help. I mean, obviously, this is just a summary.
Drops of water in a desert are appreciated, you know?
Yeah, so we don't know how much more she's going to go. And obviously, any of those things requires Congress.
Yeah. You know...
the 13% increase, 100% requires Congress.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But next on the list, I would say, bill would also ensure that spouses and children of highly skilled workers, as well as people who come to the U.S. on fiancé visas, are eligible to work legally in the United States. So, I mean, spouses of highly skilled workers, so that's going to cover, you know, obviously H-1Bs. It might cover O dependents, but children on that list. That's very, very interesting, intriguing. You know, highly skilled workers coming to the United States. It's always been a frustration that kids of working age, you know, cannot work for that time, especially when they're 18 to 21. You're wanting to enroll in school, you know, get a good internship or something, and you can't. So interesting there.
So what problem do you have with this, Brian?
I need specificity.
I'll tell you what problem I have with this. It is, I have more tendency to believe what Trump is going to do, that it will be done, than what Harris is planning on doing will be done. Because she is talking about a change in the law that requires Congress to act on.
This is true, yeah.
And therefore, take that and kick it as far as your foot can kick a ball, and if the ball comes back, you're lucky, which it'll never come back.
I've got what you're saying. I mean, fixing immigration law with
this is not serious attempt to address the issue.
Fixing immigration law with a new law is something that we've talked about in this venue here, and we've kind of stopped talking about it for a while because they're all, you know, I'll believe it when I see it, sort of things. I guess.
It's not a pragmatic way to resolve the problem, because the pragmatic way is to find ways around Congress, which are limited, but you have to say, I'm going to pass an executive order that does this.
Yeah.
You know, you could go to court and lose, you know, that you cannot do that.
Yeah.
But there's no promises of executive order here.
Yeah, if I had to give a criticism of, you know, Democrats in general, it's that they aren't taking particularly bold action on anything. It's try what you can get away with is the alternative, and that's sort of what Donald Trump is known for. It's, you know, I'm going to do it, and we'll see, if you want to challenge me, we'll see you in court. In the meantime, his version of the policy, you know, let's say he creates a policy to do X, Y, Z, does it via executive order. And it can take ages to challenge something in court. And in the meantime, he's doing what he wants to do. I mean, the classic scenario of this during the Donald Trump administration was all sorts of H-1B policy changes. You know, he made those changes either through policy or executive orders from the top down, and it took years to get those things, you know, undone. And he laughed his way to the bank. And I guess, you know, I'm going to just sort of echo you and say these things are, you know, nice words, but don't give us any benefit right now. And if you take bold action, you can maybe get what you want for a little while, even if it doesn't survive in the long term in terms of, you know.
So basically, she's increasing the number of immigrant visas, both family and employment, by 250,000 in 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what she's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing else.
Yeah.
So in terms of, just go through this. H-1B visas are getting approved without any challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some challenges, but they're reasonable challenges.
Yeah,
There's nothing
they're predictable
crazy.
challenges, ones that you could usually overcome. I mean,
Yes.
I can't remember the last time I saw an H-1B negative decision in this office. You know.
Yes, yes, that's nothing crazy. Yes, and obviously, there's a whole lot of things on not employment-based immigration that we're not going to touch on too much because time is limited. But basically, you know, some asylum and TPS, temporary protected status, and undocumented and refugee stuff that she's proposing that are kind of, again, fluffy and friendly, and not a great digression from the path that we're in.
Yeah. Well, if I'm going to talk about her a little bit more, I guess what I'd say is I love this last little bit about, you know, fixed immigration law for children who are waiting on green cards along with their parents so they don't age out when they're talking about the Child Status Protection Act, apparently making some sort of changes there. And that's one which seems to be aching for a solution because probably, you know, a couple times a month I have to have a conversation with somebody about, you know, my child is aging out under the Child Status Protection Act.
Does not help.
Isn't going to save them. And again, it's usually a sad, you know, scenario. It's, you know, mom or dad's been here for 15 years. This child has known nowhere else as to live, you know, since lived in the United States since as long as they can remember, and then they're told, sorry, you can't immigrate with mom and dad. You've run out of temporary, you know, H1, H4 status, for example. You're changing to student status, and good luck staying in the United States after your degree. And
yes.
Sad,
Right.
Some of the most kind of upsetting consults for me.
Okay. Status quo, slight improvement through Congress. No rocking the boat,
Yeah.
no throwing people off the ship
Yeah.
in an aggressive way.
Well, I want to maybe close it up a little bit, say, well, we're kind of living in an H-1B sort of paradise right now. If it's our favorite visa to talk about here, it's because we do a lot of them. I don't think that's going to continue, as maybe it's a good segue to the Donald Trump side. I don't think that's going to continue indefinitely under either administration. Biden folks had proposed a revision to the H-1B rules, which we talked about a while back, in terms of, you know, revising the definition of specialty occupation, changing what kind of degrees would qualify, you know, that sort of thing. And they haven't published a final version of those rules, but I can't help but think some final version of them is going to be coming, if not exactly what we saw, maybe something new on that front from the prospective new Harris administration. And those proposed rules aren't really that far from what the Donald Trump administration was proposing during, you know, his time in office.
At least one of them.
Yeah.
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 All right. Okay, so let's go to Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, who's ahead in the polls, Brian?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't think anybody
Too close to call.
Too close to call. Well, I have heard. I've seen a lot of things that said, you know, dead heat, neck and neck. I've seen some things that say Donald Trump is ahead. I've seen the other ones that say Kamala Harris is ahead, and you know, half the polls favoring Trump are baloney. You know, so no answer there.
All right. What is Donald Trump is proposing?
Yeah. So, you know, crediting good work where good work is due. You know, there's this lovely publication, maybe I'll put it up on the screen for just a half second here, from the National Foundation for American Policy. There it is. It's this sort of lovely, pretty recent executive summary of, looks like it's back in August, of what Donald Trump did for high-skilled immigration in the United States. Maybe I'll go so far as to put a link to this.
Maybe just keep it and then we can scroll it here.
Yeah, I'll put a link to it in the in the chat here in case anybody's interested in taking a look, because it's just a good read. But it's sort of a hey, remember sort of document about here's all the things that happened during the Donald Trump administration. And, you know, there's sort of a great summary up here. H-1B denial rates rising to 29% in the second quarter of fiscal year 2020. No further deference to prior decisions, meaning who cares if we approved your case last time? We're allowed to reinvent the wheel on this one and make changes there.
So everybody understand this one. This one is significant because prior to the change in policy, if your H-1B was approved by that employer under the same circumstances, and then you're applying for a extension, the fact that you were the same employer working for the same project, we've done it before. It's almost automatic. You used to get approved.
Yeah. Same work, same details. Why would I waste my time going over this again when we made a good decision last time? You know?
Yeah. We cannot just be inconsistent.
Yeah.
So that got thrown out the window. So now you got to prove every case from the beginning every time.
Yeah. No.
Huge,
No resting on your laurels. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So Buy American, Hire American, which didn't say anything about H-1B generally, but it's basically, you know, favor U.S. workers in everything you do. Sort of an administration-wide, you know, everything you do out there, favor American workers. Obviously, with big immigration impacts there. Let me see. This is one I forgot about. Placed on the regulatory agenda to impose restrictions on OPT for international students. So, you know,
made OPT more difficult and less desirable with less flexibility. Remember, there was also
the website publication, where maybe what you're thinking about, where they said just post it on the USCIS website someday. Oh yeah, you can't work at an offsite while you're on OPT. You have to have a supervisor, you know, right there with you.
Yeah.
What else we got here on the list? Let me see. I'm pretty sure this one involves the higher H-1B wages, basically accelerating the H-1B wages. So I think it's like the 95th percentile, basically pricing most employers out of H-1B wages. And I can't help but linger on this one for a moment, Sam, because, you know, a lot of the people in our audience are sort of high-skilled, you know, IT professionals. But we do a lot of H-1B visas for people who are not in that category, you know? And, you know, if you're doing an H-1B visa for an HR person or social work, suddenly those things become infeasible, let alone, you know, public sector clients, for example, who'd want to hire people, you know, say for an IT role. Well, too bad if you're not paying Silicon Valley rates, you're never going to get that worker, you know?
So there was a report in the in the Wall Street Journal last week, September, mid-October.
Yeah.
I do not remember the date, in which it confirmed that there is a team of aides to Donald Trump, and they are now proposing a series of executive orders to immediately implement everything that he went after and reinstate everything he did.
Yeah.
So there is a list of executive decisions that are ready to go.
Yeah.
To reinstate all these things.
Yeah. Which is a little bit stressful. Speaking of things that a little bit stressful, this is stopping broad categories of people from coming to the United States. I'd forgotten about this one. I put it out of my head because I was so happy it was gone. The limiting of H-1B visas during COVID. We're not going to be admitting people to the United States on H-1B and L visas unless it's in national interest. I did a whole lot of those cases, having to argue, you know, how do you get your employee back to the United States, and, you know, having to argue that their work is important, you know.
Was that a COVID-related?
COVID-related, yeah.
So this one is going to be difficult to kind of reimpose one more time, because it's about, but if you're vaccinated, how can that be a problem? So
basically, I think the logic of it was hurting the economic recovery of the United States, and, you know, high unemployment post-COVID. And as I recall, one of the reasons why this failed is because the occupations that they were really kind of effectively excluding, the specialty occupations, weren't high unemployment occupations.
Right.
Let me see. Something we touched upon earlier: the inflated salaries for H-1B visa holders. Now,
yeah. So that one got lost in court, got shut down in court. But the article saying that now they're a lot smarter, and they are definitely putting in a sound legal foundation to all these changes.
Yeah.
Such that it becomes more difficult to overturn them in court.
Yeah, when I talk to somebody who's not an immigration attorney about what was it like, doing employment-based immigration during the Donald Trump administration, it's those guys had a lot of ideas they wanted to accomplish, and what saved the metaphorical bacon of a lot of people was that they didn't do it right. They fell apart in court because they didn't abide by procedures for making rules properly. That's what killed them a whole lot. And again, if they come into this a little bit smarter, a little bit more prepared, and again, having those executive orders on day one, we took us probably about maybe 4 months for us to see the impacts of the first Donald Trump administration in what we do. And I guess I would agree with you that we could see it a lot earlier, as early as the next week or two.
Well, but if they do it by executive order, that's not good enough. They have to do some of the stuff by rulemaking. So it's going to be a rulemaking process. And they're ready, they're drafting them, they're getting ready to do that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the rules they were proposing died because they couldn't accomplish. They tried to do a lot of things at the end of the administration. They were sort of banking on a second one, and they fell apart due to just not having the time. And now they would have a 4-year runway to actually accomplish these things.
Now you have also the, I mean, again, just to kind of clarify for everybody, we don't know whether any of these things will happen.
Yeah.
We really don't know. Now, one of the counterweight, or the counter-argument in the Trump administration is this new love fest between Trump and
Elon Musk.
Yes. And Elon Musk is championshiping, I guess, the cause for Trump. I mean, he's even handing out millions of dollars to people, and so forth. So he is someone that I think Trump is going to listen to.
Yeah, but he also, well, maybe you're getting to this, but he likes employment immigration as far as I can get it.
And that's the counterweight.
He owns a bunch of tech companies, and
so he may be able to just tell Trump, this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
And Trump is the kind of guy that listens. These people can spend a whole year preparing a volume of document. He can walk in and say, throw this all in the garbage. I don't want to do it. I changed my mind. So he is very unpredictable that way.
Yeah, I mean, but I imagine it's more nuanced. His logic is: I own Twitter, I own SpaceX, I own Tesla, and those are some big name, big money companies. I'm going to pay my folks at the top of the pile anyway. Meaning, I'll get, as long as, who cares about everybody else? Raise your wages or whatever, and knock all your smaller parties out of the market, essentially. Make those visas available for big giant businesses, and sort of totally cut smaller businesses out of the working visa market, essentially.
But that we don't know.
Yeah. Oh well, we're talking about possibilities here for sure.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah. But definitely. I mean, you get this guy by the name of Steve Miller, I think.
Stephen Miller, yeah, he's the guy.
Stephen Miller, who was the architect of the Trump administration legal immigration restriction. He is still with the president. He is still working in the background. He has the history of the lawsuits and the defeats. He's not an idiot. He's a smart guy, and he has every intention to bring all that back, and he is involved today.
Yeah.
But you do have the Trump Elon Musk relationship, which I think it may give him an insight to what IT companies, large IT companies need.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if that is going to save the day. No discussion whatsoever on expansion of numbers, acceleration of visas. Of course, talk about the largest deportation in American history. but nothing about legal immigration solutions.
Yeah.
None of that being discussed.
I mean, a common theme in all of our conversations here when it comes to politics and immigration is that employment, immigration, legal immigration in general gets swept under the rug.
He wants to give green cards to everybody who got a college degree from the U.S. Yeah. But you know, he's so unpredictable that
that's going to require a law. That's going to require a new visa program. You know,
but he's not going to put that ahead of 500,000 people waiting.
500,000 people. Well, I don't know.
During the visa bulletin, I mean,
well,
backlog. I mean that's not possible.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's not possible.
You write a new law that says you graduate from a school, you get a green card on XYZ terms. If that is outside of the Immigration Act's present allocation under the EB1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. categories.
You need Congress for that.
You do, yes.
Yeah, you need Congress.
Well, we can agree upon that.
Yeah, we need Congress. Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be not as much as the 250,000, I think. There's not going to be 250,000 people who got American college degrees or science degrees.
I mean, a lot of the people, a lot of the 500,000 people in the backlog, a good chunk of them, raise your hand in the audience if you're a graduate from a U.S. university. We do tons of H-1Bs here, and it's a good chunk of them have master's degrees from U.S. universities. So, again...
I mean, obviously... it affects employment immigration because ending of birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
So again, it requires Congress, and he is saying that he is going to do a unilateral executive order, meaning take me to court.
Yeah.
But basically, if your son or child born in the United States, they will not become U.S. citizen. That's something that they went after. Last time, just talked about it, and Stephen Miller is really excited about getting that done. Obviously,
huge fundamental change there. So,
green cards for foreign students, ideological screening. So the ideological screening, basically based on where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Right. Depending on your political opinion, those things, they'll do like a social media screen of you.
They already do sort of things like that. If you raise your hand, if you've done a DS 160 in the last couple of years, they ask you about your social media so they can look into you for sure.
Yeah. So that's what we got here, Brian. I'm not sure I have great news for our listeners who are in the employment immigration line, except that I don't think there's any really big change for them. But there could be bad news, especially if you're on the H-1B visa during the labor certification process. You can see your H-1B threatened.
Well,
and he hasn't talked about adjustment of status. You remember the
the public charge rule.
The public charge rule.
That's on I think that's on the list of executive orders. In the public charge rule, all they got to do is the public charge rule's on the books. They just have to reinterpret it. That's something they can probably get away with.
Yeah, and whether or not he's going to start flying these RFEs on adjustment cases, that's another thing that can happen. So I don't think I think the summary is clearly. Trump is going to be more of a disruptive force.
On brand, yeah.
And Harris is going to be more of the status quo.
Yeah.
I don't know which one is better, honestly. I like some disruptive force, except that too much disruptive can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
And Harris, I don't see any great strength in trying to fix anything, to be honest with you.
Under a Harris administration, I expect my present known immigration frustrations to continue, and me to be aggravated by everything takes too long for the next 4 years. Everything. That would probably be my number one. I would expect more of that. I haven't heard anything about let's really fund the immigration-related agencies. Let's I expect that I'm going to be miserable at the consulate, miserable at USCIS for the next 4 years. Whereas, again, with the disruption of Donald Trump, I will probably find exciting new paths for immigration. Maybe it's the sort of thing where we might find ourselves in court a whole lot more, but for different reasons. Yeah.
Well, that's what we got here, guys. I hope it's kind of helpful. Of course, This is just a look forward. We don't know what's going to happen. I guess we'll find out who's the president and talk more about it maybe next week, if we find out.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think we're going to find out who's president by?
We might have an idea.
If there's a major landslide one way or the other, I guess we will know. And if it's close, it's going to be a lot of political and legal positioning, I guess. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
We're going to take questions now. Appreciate your patience listening to us. Hopefully it was insightful and helpful. We're going to take questions. Our rule is that don't assume everything we tell you is 100% accurate. We don't know enough about your case to give you a comprehensive recommendation, and therefore there's no attorney-client relationship established because we are talking to you here indirectly through the World Wide Web. And if you decide that there is something of an interest or you heard something that's really important that got you going in terms of, yeah, this can help me, consult with an attorney of your choice before you make a decision on your case. With that, let's take the first question, Brian.
Yes. Let's shoot for one from RD here. Remember, folks, if you just sent us a question in before we went live, we may not see them here, so there you go. So I tried traveling to the U.S. from India, B2, stopped at Schiphol saying I overstayed 4 days last visit during COVID and my visa was canceled in 2021. Wow. I had booked ticket in advance, but not allowed to board flight unless I had a negative PCR result within 72 hours of journey, which I had to repeat 3 times as the results were confirmed only after 72 hours. Hence, I was able to board the flight only 4 days after I-94 expiry. Will I be refused another visit visa? I gotta say, Sam, I love the question because we don't usually talk about, visa stamp in your passport revocations in this venue. So what's your thoughts?
Well, visa revocation is a big deal. I talk to a lot of people about
We get a lot of calls about that, yeah.
We talk to a lot of people about visa revocation from outside the country, and we represent a lot of people in that area. I think this is, the way you present it to me gives me the feeling that it is something that's excusable.
Yeah.
The question is, can you present it and document it to the consulate in a way that gives you that same opportunity to overcome a potential negative finding? And you can. You just have to be organized and prepared to address it with exhibits or evidence as much as you can.
I agree with you, everything you said. I think this is what I would call a thoughtful visitor visa application where, you're not coming into it as you're a sure thing, but you have a very, what I love is you have a very clear issue that you need to resolve and you have a reasonable explanation for it, and that's that. Will I be refused another visitor visa? That's nobody has that exact answer, unfortunately. Yeah,
it's incredibly fact-driven.
Yeah.
And your case and your situation is one that you could benefit consulting with an experienced attorney to have a bigger data, information about who you are, what were you doing here, how long did you stay here, what really happened. So there's a lot of information that typically I would need if I'm representing somebody that can I build a positive case for someone to help them overcome that negative finding. So on one side of the spectrum, you are a person of a limited financial means, you're single, you have no ties to the home country.
Yeah, all those other visa factors, yeah.
And then you came here, you overstayed after staying for a long time without a good explanation, and then you left. That's one example. Another sample, you're a businessman with a lot of companies, you're involved with a lot of companies, you have a long history of employment, you've visited the United States multiple times, you've always left on time, you're married, you have children, everybody was staying at home, and then you come in and you explain to them this. That's on the other extreme. This case is more likely to be approved. Most cases are somewhere in the middle. Some cases have other problems in it that are more complex. So these things drive a case in terms of a revocation, how we as attorney prepare and present them to the consulate.
Never, always a rare, but my short answer would be, it sounds plausible that this individual could get a new visitor visa.
Yes, provided you do your homework. Yeah.
From a frequent viewer here, Wesley. Trump presidency mandated 7 years of financial documents as part of I-45, which resulted in cartons of printed docs, which I had to submit. You and me both, Wesley. We probably killed a lot of trees with that one.
You did one for yourself. We received a ridiculous number when we were doing the adjustments.
Yeah.
We actually had to rent an extra 3,000 square foot of space next door to us to handle the volume of paper that we received.
Yeah, we had literally hundreds, if not thousands, of cases, in our office at that time, and all of them had to have,
these documents
publicly charged. Mom's case did, dad's case did, and the kids.
Broke.
Yeah.
The company that was maintaining our copiers were in the office practically daily because we were just printing way beyond what these copiers' capacity was.
And when I think about, obviously it was just a logistical challenge for us to get this entirely new list of documents from our clients, because they implemented that rule just before the filing of the big I-45 rush. Just getting those documents in is one thing, and then suddenly, just think about what was the cost? What did we spend to get those things FedEx? Just the extra weight of those documents to USC. Thousands upon thousands of dollars there. And logistical challenge, Sam, of moving those documents amongst the government offices when they move them. Just the extra couple of tens of thousands of pounds. I think about government costs and if something costs 1 penny in one case, what happens when it happens a million times? These things, and that's something that really kind of stuck in my head for a while. It's it wasn't just us doing hundreds of cases around the country. It's every immigration attorney like that doing tons and tons and tons of those.
But Wesley has a 2 of 3.
Yes.
2 of 2.
Let me see here. Made the life of Muslim immigrants devastating by banning them. Yep. And with Biden, no real progress on anything. So immigrants who cannot vote, neither party does anything. That's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Right on, my friend. And for those who are from India, which is the most backlogged country in the world in employment immigration, penalized because they produce the largest number of talent that this country needs. Yeah. And that's the only reason they're being penalized. You have a person of an Indian origin in the White House, regardless of which president will be elected. You get Kamala Harris on one side. Her mother is Indian, so she understands the issues and connects with it very well. And on the other hand, the vice president's wife is of an Indian origin, so you have that as well. So hopefully, one of them coming to the White House, whoever comes into the White House, has the emotional and the background connection to the suffering of employment immigration professionals in this country, second to none in the world, and hopefully can resolve that. Yeah.
So from Cesar. Great name. Hi, Mr. Shehabin Burke. Do you guys think this elected president will work towards increasing the quantity of green card visas?
Well, based on what we have, Harris is saying she wants to do that by 250,000 green cards a year. Yeah. Nothing in the Donald Trump, except that he's going to give green cards for college graduates. But he didn't talk about increasing numbers. Increasing numbers requires Congress. And whether or not we are going to have an alignment between Congress and the president in terms of being on the same party, which happens once every 30 years, to be able to pass legislation, that becomes the question. Yeah. And that is something that is not likely to occur. So
yeah, it's something that Wesley was quick to point out. No matter who becomes president, without a majority in the House and Senate, no immigration bill is going to pass. Worst thing president can do is EO, which Bibi Kamala is far better than ex-President Trump. But I got to say, in terms of, I imagine Wesley, you would like what you theorize that President Kamala Harris would do in terms of executive orders, but as a guy, I know which one of them is demonstrated, as we were talking about earlier, an ability to put out executive orders. Donald Trump. You know, there are so many things that President Biden could be doing right now, and or Kamala Harris could be doing in her administration by executive order, and they haven't. You know, and if I have to give it to Donald Trump, it's, you know, that attitude of nuts to you guys, I'm doing it. I'll see you in court. Accomplishes his goals. It takes forever to challenge anything in court, and during that forever, he's getting his way, and everybody else is feeling, you know, well, pain if you're on the wrong end of it, of course.
He's definitely unique.
Yeah.
He's definitely unique. The problem I have, and he has, the illegal immigration is a problem that needs to be fixed. Yeah. And you need somebody to fix it. If there's a chance, it's going to be him, honestly, to fix it over Harris. I'm going to be honest with you.
Sure. It's his signature sort of thing to talk about, for sure.
Yeah, and he started it in the last term when he started building the wall. Of course, he couldn't get Mexico to pay for it because this is what he was saying.
Yeah.
We're paying for it. And he is going to continue that. And he is going to be true to what he promises. The reason people are the only reason people are voting for Trump is what comes out of his mouth is unfiltered, but he intends to do that. Yeah. On the other side, you really don't know what you're going to get. Yeah. You may not like Trump, or you may like Trump. What you hear is what will happen. Yep. And that's it.
I fully agree with that. I can't, you know, say like what he delivers in this all the time, much of the time necessarily, yeah. But he does deliver what he says.
He is
what is unique for a politician.
Yeah. So he is worried. Also, he will be worried about his legacy.
Sure.
So he is assassinated twice. Well, 2 attempts for assassination.
Yeah,
and 2 impeachments.
Which is, as an aside, this is not a criticism of your, you know, that we can barely remember these things anymore. Is sort of a
and 2 impeachments. Yeah. 2 impeachments. Yeah. No president of the United States ever been impeached twice. Yeah. No president of the United States had 2 attempts for assassination that I can remember or I know of. I could be corrected.
Yeah, maybe Ronald Reagan. I don't remember.
One time.
Yeah, one time. Okay.
One time. Okay. Now, and no one has been challenged with his legacy in terms of the January 6th fiasco.
Oh, yeah.
So now he has an opportunity to make things right. And I think he wants to make things right for all Americans, in my opinion. I think there's an opportunity with him to change, and that's why people like him. People like him, people vote for him, even though he's unfiltered, sometimes he says mean things, but people like that. Maybe that's solution with him. I don't know. Maybe he will do something good. We will not find out if he's not elected, and we will find out if he's elected. It's not in my hands.
The premise of Donald Trump is a massive change, the status quo, and eventually there's a new status quo. And I don't know what fundamentally our work looks like on the other side of that, but it's potentially it's different. You know, that's for sure. And you know, maybe there's a world where we're doing less employment-based immigration, but the people that are going through that process are happier about the way the process works because they're not left in an immigration limbo or misery for the next,
20 years or so.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah. So that's not an endorsement of any president. We're just looking at it.
Yeah. Trying to look at it in a sort of a pragmatic sort of way here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a frequent Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a request for initial evidence even before biometrics, 18 days after I filed my application. How common is this? Waiting for an RFE in the mail. I don't know yet what they're asking for. So, Raj, I do not know much about your case, whether it's a family or employment case. I'm going to assume, and forgive me if I assume incorrectly, I'm going to say employment-based case. If your case, I tell people with a request for evidence, if your case is done right and it's sound, the foundations of it, most requests for evidence are resolved positively and overcome. I can't predict. Is that common? It's not common to have a request for evidence so quick, quite frankly, but sometimes they're overworked and they would like to get things off their desk quickly, so they make up a request for evidence. When the RFE is so quick, Brian, I call into question how careful they were in producing the RFE. It could be one of those that they want to buy more.
Bottom line for Raj is, I guess you'll know in a few days, but common ones are lack of medical exams. Sometimes they jump on you really early for something like that. Birth certificate ones are real common issues, but again, these things are usually resolvable. Maybe it's sometimes they lose pages of forms, and so, we didn't get they typically reject a case for that though. So again, probably something relatively simple for one of these things. If you look for every case type, there's a list of initial evidence that's required. Look to the form instructions. Odds are it's something on that list, something that's listed in the I-45 form instructions that they don't believe is present in your case.
Missing an I-140, missing a labor certification.
Yeah, missing something really fundamental like that. Yeah. That's what requests for initial evidence is about.
Potentially. Yeah.
So, and that's just me sending that link there from Rasu. My I-140 was initially approved through Company A. Can Company B file an H-1B extension using Company A's I-140 approval? Role remains the same. Company A never filed H-1B extension after I-140 approval. Well, my big question would be, is that I-140 still approved, and has it been approved longer than 6 months? It sounds like it probably is, meaning even if Company A were to have withdrew that I-140 approval, they can't really do that, meaning...
After 180 days.
Yeah, after it's been approved for 180 days, meaning it seems highly likely that Company B would be able to do that. Pretty standard thing. We do that all the time around here because H-1B visas provide for portability. You jump from one company to another for a better opportunity. You have your I-140 approval, use them.
Yep.
I guess my only thing I would say about that is there's always a limitation that said if your priority date is available, they may not allow you to extend your H-1B unless you filed your I-45. Whole other bag of beans there, but always
in which case, that's a different question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think we already answered this one from Cesar regarding visa availability. Let me see. From Keith, Kent.
Do you think EB3 will move after election? My priority date is December 2022. So I think I'm going to emphasize the first part. After the election, it means that whether or not the election has anything to do with the visa movement, I don't think in the immediate vicinity of the election for the next few months or even 6 months, I don't think there's going to be any change in the way things are done.
Well, I will give you a counterpoint to that because that's what I'm here for.
Sure.
We agree that the visa bulletin can be a bit of a political beast, right? If you change the people who are producing it, or you change the rules, criteria by which they're issuing it, in theory, you could change the movement of the visa bulletin. Might be influenced.
But my counter to you is that these are not political jobs. These are civil servants.
Yeah.
Okay. And normally, I know.
I have a great counterpoint for you.
I know this administration. I know Trump is saying he's going to even change those people.
Yeah.
I know that. That's maybe your counter. I don't know.
Not even that, but yeah.
But I think it's going to take a little while to get to these people.
Well,
if they get to them.
I would agree that that probably isn't on their day one executive order list, right? And but to my counterpoint on the changes of people at the top, back in May of 2020 when you started seeing changes of the way they were adjudicating H-1Bs, for example, I don't think the officers that were doing those changes saying, but the people at the top of USCIS, there's here's a new policy, guys. Here's the rules by which you issue this, and there you go. And we've always talked about the visa bulletin it's basically essentially a best guess under the law, and all it is change the criteria of your guessing.
So what we're talking is if Trump comes in.
Yeah, we are talking about
because if Harris comes in, none of those changes are going to take. I mean, it's going to be that train, and then later on maybe some changes.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is if Trump, but everything I'm reading about Trump is anti-immigration, slowing legal immigration, slowing illegal immigration. There's nothing there, at least, that has any hint that he has anything positive. Now, he can change, and therefore, it's my opinion that I don't see an immediate change.
I would fundamentally agree with
now,
that.
there could be a longer term change, but on like the next 5-6 months, I don't think so.
No, I expect the same visa bulletin, the visa bulletin for January, or sorry, December is the next one's coming. That one's already been written in stone. The one for January, the one for February, I don't really expect a difference in
And
impact.
Kenneth is the rest of the world,
Yeah,
EB3.
I guess so.
And the rest of the world, EB3 is a number. So that is the least likely to be affected by politics.
Yeah.
It's a number, meaning that there's no cross flow to it. There is no, it's basically counting adjustments.
Have the visas been used? No. So
It's
we
the
moved the
simplest
visa
number
bulletin.
to look at.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the simplest number to look at. And therefore, it's the least vulnerable to politics,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So I don't expect changes in the trend of the EB3 rest of the world for Kenneth, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a fair answer. Here's a great question from Suresh. I really like this one. In what order does USCIS pick up the AOS petitions for processing? Is it first come, first served basis, priority date, or category, or something else? And Sam Shihab, what do you think? What do you think the answer is to that question?
There is multiple answers.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I agree. So it is something else. And it is something else because it's not how the law is written first in, first out.
Yep.
But the law does not understand, whoever wrote this law does not understand the complexity of implementing this rule.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's impossible because these adjustment status are sprinkled all over the country.
Yep.
And therefore, there is no mechanism by which to say, oh, I just finished an adjustment here. Let me go to a portal.
Clink. Move to the next one in line.
To
Yeah.
the next one in line.
Well,
that system doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, that goes out. We heard a question for somebody. Well, I just filed my case and I got an RFIE, and suddenly, that guy's there before everybody else. But what about the guy who filed, the case, a week later, but he didn't have an RFIE? All these things quickly fall apart. And then what? I mean, I agree with the premise. So
it is something else. It's basically first in, first out, per location. In the reality,
Yeah.
and then you have the mix of the politics and the policies, and the mix of, oh, I forgot.
Bill was on vacation last week. His cases didn't move. Things like that.
Or I forgot. We got another 7,000 boxes downstairs. We forgot all about it. We've been working off of this warehouse.
Yeah.
Oh, we forgot about this warehouse. There's no system.
Well, yeah.
There's no system.
I want to underline that. That you talk about the concept of boxes. They deal with boxes. Raise your hand if you've been to a USCIS interview. You don't have to
raise your hand if you've been to USCIS service.
I've never been to a service center, but I'll imagine your hand was raised for the interview part as well. Yep. And they shuffle your cases around in boxes. One of the things I tell people that sort of blows their mind is the government officer is going to have a copy of your case in front of you. And by have a copy of your case, I mean they're going to have the same original one that you signed 3 years ago. And wherever that case will have been, it'll be sent to probably at this point Chicago, and it would have made it to another a lockbox in Chicago, and it goes to the National Benefit Center, and then it'll have gone to the local field office where you live. Those cases move around. And they move around in primitive ways. And the concept of oops, we forgot about XYZ is very, very plausible.
What about, Brian, when USCIS does an interview, and then they say, oh, here's 25, 50 questions. Well, let me look at this. I'll get back with you with a decision. No action for 8 months, and then a second interview. Oh, I got another 15 more questions. Where's the first in, first out?
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Gone. I mean, we have tons of sort of stories about, USCIS sitting on cases like a chicken on an egg. It's when sometimes the interpretation is if they have a problem case they don't know what to deal with, I'll just put it on the back burner for a while. I mean, especially in the family world, that relationship, I don't buy it. If I think that relationship's, a little bit weak, they might let that case sit a while longer and wait for that relationship to fall apart. At least that's one of my paranoias about the subject.
I like the next question.
Yes. How long can I stay in the U.S. without GCEAD, and is there any rule about this? with GCEAD, excuse me, I think I said without. The answer is there is no answer to this one, but if you're asking for good advice from an attorney, the answer would be as short a time as possible. Would that sound?
How long can I stay in the U.S. without a job?
Without a job with green card EAD.
Yeah.
Is there any rule about it?
Is there a rule about it? Well, there is a rule. There is a rule about this. The rule is this: the longer you stay without a job with GCEAD, the less likely your green card will be approved. It's a sliding scale.
Okay.
So I can start with the two extremes.
Sure.
One extreme is 1 week without a job with GCEAD. Another extreme is 11 months without a job and with green card EAD. I can assure you that the one that you've been unemployed for 11 months, for example, or 14 months or whatever, that gap is too big, if discovered, for USCIS to feel comfortable approving your case.
I'm gonna flesh out this hypothetical scenario. So you have 14 months of unemployment, right? And you say, then you get that RFE saying, give us a supplement J, and you go, oh, shoot, and you then get a supplement J, and that says on that supplement J form it says what this new employer is offering you. It'll say the date you joined, and you probably join them as soon as you get that offer. And do you think they can deny that case?
I think they can.
On what grounds? I think I agree with you, but I want to hear it. Sorry.
The grounds is that the job offer is not bona fide. That is going to be the easiest ground.
Well, how would they? Well, I have a supplement J. It says they're swearing to the truth and accuracy of here that I have a job offer.
Yeah, I mean that's the easiest way to challenge it.
Yeah.
Now, what
just start digging deep into that job and find a way to pluck it apart.
Yeah, I mean there was maybe the labor certification was not filed in good faith. Maybe the I-140 was not filed in good faith. They're going to go down and trying to find something not done in good faith.
Okay.
Because that's the easiest way to do it.
Well, yeah, I'm familiar with this concept. It's basically if they don't really like your case, if something doesn't smell right for them, they can find something. I went to an interview once with somebody, and he was really into finding a status violation by my client. And the answer is everybody. The vast majority of people probably have some sort of status violation in their history, And this guy said, I got to check every day in the United States. I got to check everything because if you ever had a status violation, I have to deny this case, But so I guess that concept is plausible to me, but I guess that's one I'd really love to fight with them about.
There's a lot of USCIS offices that do things by the book. But there's a lot of other USCIS offices, or some, that do not do things by the book. Yeah. In one service center, in one local office in a city, is not Columbus, Ohio. I'm from Columbus, so I'm very familiar with Columbus. Columbus is they're really nice.
I really like the officers that work here in Columbus.
They work with you. But I have also represented many people in multiple offices. There are some offices, they have the denial person.
Yeah.
The denial person is an officer.
I know who that guy is in Columbus, for the record.
I don't know if there's one in Columbus.
Yeah.
I cannot confirm there's one in Columbus. I don't think so. But the one.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. The one I'm referring to is outside our area, and they have the denial person, and the denial person get referred because they love to deny. They basically find a reason to deny. Because they've decided to deny because they don't like the case. Yeah. So back to this question, though, without digressing too much.
We have gone off the rails here.
We have. There's no rule. But the longer you stay, the more difficult your case becomes, in my opinion. Is there a day? Is there a time? I don't know. I think less than a month I'm comfortable. More than 6 months I'm uncomfortable. And somewhere in between, I'm going to flip between comfortable to uncomfortable. I'm not sure where.
My short answer is obviously agree with everything you said. There's no rule, but it's an inflection point, right, where suddenly it becomes real interesting. And for most types of U.S. immigration, I don't want my client to have an interesting case, an interesting thing that they want to talk around the water cooler about. I want you to have a case that is boring as the last case they approved and as boring as the next one, so they feel real good about it.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Zoomer.
Yes.
My EB3 I-140 denied, but I received my EAD that was filed with I-140 and I-45. I know that EAD and I-4 is technically null. Can I use EAD until I receive an official letter from USCIS telling me that not to use it? So, well, I'm sorry about your denial. Can he use that EAD, Brian?
Not really. I mean, technically, I suppose. To what end? You're going to be receiving a decision notice in a matter of days. You know, I can't recommend it. It raises more questions than issues that it resolves, I guess is my take on it.
I mean, you can use it until you get the letter.
Yeah, I
100%
agree. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, though.
Why? He did not get an official notice yet. All these online notices are garbage.
Yep,
and they're not legal notices.
I fully agree.
Yet.
And when you get a notice that disposes of the I-45, that's going to dispose of your EAD and AP as well, because that's what they do right now. They'll tell you the validity.
Now, if you've changed your address without filing AR-11, for example, and you did not receive the I-45 notice, that's not a defense.
Yeah.
Because if later on say I did not get a notice, they're going to say, did you file an AR-11? Otherwise, that notice is served on you whether or not you received it. So with every case, the devil is in the details. Therefore, the time frame between knowing electronically that the I-45 is denied and actually not being able to work because you've received the paper notice, the legal notice, is going to be very short, unless they're mailing it to the wrong place, in which case, not all the time, but a lot of time it's on you.
I don't see much benefit. All I see is you know X amount of time down the road, somebody really questioning your use of the EAD after the I-45 was creating an issue, and I don't see much benefit essentially from 3 days of use of an EAD. You know.
Well, we've challenged notice before.
Oh, I've definitely done these.
When they mailed it to the wrong address.
Ooh, and that's one of my longtime immigration pet peeves. In H-1B visas, you know, touch wood, we don't see many denials lately, but when they deny an H-1B visa, who does notice go to? It goes to the employer. And I have helped advise people on scenarios where my employer lied to me and they didn't tell me the H-1B is denied. They sort of gaslit me for a while, and it causes massive problems in people's lives, for sure.
Yeah. So a little explanation here. My EB3 I-140 denied, but I received the EAD that was filed with the I-140 I-485, so he has not received the I-485.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly still I stand behind my position on that.
I agree with everything you say, but the benefit just seems so fleeting. A matter of a day or two's use of an EAD is...
it's not exactly.
Yeah.
It's theory, not practical. Will diversity visa be discontinued if Trump is elected? Well, diversity visa is part of Congress, by the law passed by Congress, but it is on his list to chop.
Yeah.
100%.
I guess I would say, you know, you can expect more difficult processing of those things, or something they can do via policy and, you know, agency policy. Yeah.
Yes, as we're running out of time here, I'm trying to get
gotcha.
as many people. Was there any spillover this year? Still no news from USCIS? We have not heard anything.
Well, yeah, they said USCIS employment based you're fine. Adjustment FAQs. So they were updating that webpage about it, and I'm curious whether there's been any updates. Yeah, they just said employment-based annual limit for fiscal year 25 will be higher than was typical before the pandemic, though lower than fiscal 21 to 24. And they haven't updated this since 10/8, so you know that's what
no
we know.
update yet. Yeah. I doubt that Trump will be elected. Harris will become president. Okay, we'll take your word. We'll come back. Zoomer visit us next week and tell us I was right or I was wrong. I.e., you were.
You know, it's fun to make presidential election predictions because there's only two options. You know,
it's simpler, right?
Yeah.
I'm staying on the fence.
Yeah,
I'm watching this one.
No, I mean, full disclosure.
Obviously, I'm voting for one of them, but
full disclosure. Sam and I had a conversation earlier today, and Aaron don't have any great predictions.
Yeah.
You know.
Can you please say a word or two on EB3, OW,
other workers? Yeah.
Other workers, snail pace. My part is 2022. Thanks.
And that's got to be rest of the world.
Well,
because
rest of the world, other workers is 10,000 per year only, out of the 140,000 I think allocated.
Yeah.
So because of that, and then you got to spread out on the whole world. Right now it's 2020, and more depressingly backlogged for China and India. And it's a straightforward number.
Yeah.
It's a straightforward number. There's no crossover, there's nothing. The only thing you can benefit if there's a spillover that could be allocated proportionately. But other than that, 10,000 visas, and depending on how many cases, I don't have the number, but that's all what I can say.
I guess I would say I'm going to just take an entirely different approach. Find a way to get to the EB3 category. Find a way to get to EB3. Find a way to get the other EB3 category where the priority date is 15th of November 2022.
Yep.
If you were in that category, your priority date would be final action current now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Last but not least,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris with a lot of hearts.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing we got. So
Yeah.
with that, we conclude
We'll see
today's.
if he's franny faces on Kamala Harris in a couple days here.
We thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. Hopefully we were helpful today in our presentation.